Clara Wynne, the 21-year-old girl, was fighting to hold on to her final breaths under the hands of her stepfather, Marlon Briggs. His rotting wooden house sat alone in the middle of the empty fields, where neighbors were miles apart and any scream for help simply dissolved into the darkness. Marlon, drunk on the thick stench of cheap liquor, howled like a cornered animal. The debt collector Hector Mullins was breathing down his neck. He had nothing left to his name except a spiraling rage, and in his mind, there was only one thought left: handing Clara over in exchange for his own life. But what he did not expect was that the small, fragile girl dared to fight back. Clara rose up and screamed in desperation, "I am not something you can sell." That sentence poured gasoline onto the demonic fire in Marlon's eyes. He slammed her against the floor covered in ash and dirt, hitting and stomping her so hard the ground itself seemed to shudder. Then, in a frenzy, he dragged Clara out into the yard, where the ancient oak tree stood silent like a witness to countless hidden sins. "It is over, you useless thing," he growled softly, pulling the rope tight around her neck. Through broken sobs, Clara managed to look up at the night sky, split in half by the branches above, and then her body grew weightless as Marlon kicked the stool away, leaving her hanging in the cold air. Her feet thrashed helplessly, her breath shredded into pieces. The world shrank into a flickering point of light, and then darkness. But at the end of the dirt road leading past the Briggs house, a lone rider was rushing forward on horseback, eyes widening the moment he saw Clara's dangling feet swaying in the moonlight. Tonight, fate was about to change its course. The quiet dirt road leading past the Briggs farm suddenly echoed with a rapid rush of hoofbeats. Elias Crowford, a man in his early 50s with seasoned yet gentle eyes, was heading home after a long day checking the fences. He expected to meet no one on a freezing night like this, until the sight of a body swaying beneath the oak tree struck him. Elias pulled the reins so abruptly that his horse reared with a startled cry. "My lord," he gasped, leaping from the saddle before the animal had even settled. Clara Wynne was hanging motionless, her legs already turning a deep shade of purple, her toes twitching only faintly from the last sparks of survival instinct. Her eyes were half closed, her head tilted at a painful angle, and the dark bruise tightening around her neck was horrifying to behold. Elias rushed forward, his hands genuinely trembling as he lifted her weight to loosen the rope's choke. "Hold on, child. Do not give up now," he murmured, voice breaking. He drew the small dagger from his belt and swung it upward. With a sharp snap, the rope severed, and Clara collapsed into his arms. Her body was limp, like an old doll forgotten in the rain. Elias pressed his ear near her mouth. A faint breath, thin as mist, was still there. All right, he whispered, his own breath shaking with relief and fear woven together. Without hesitation, Elias lifted Clara onto the horse, holding her close, as if she might fall apart. His arms wrapped around her shoulders to keep her warm, and the horse surged forward, racing toward his sprawling ranch. On the way, Clara jerked weakly, a fragile sound slipping from her raw throat. "Do not let them take me back." Her voice was so faint that Elias had to lean in just to hear it. "They will never lay a hand on you again," he answered, his tone hard as steel. Moonlight washed over Clara's face, still smudged with dirt, streaks of dried blood, and the raw marks of the rope reddened around her neck. Elias felt his chest tighten at the sight. He had seen cruelty in his lifetime, but this was beyond anything he could imagine. When they reached the ranch yard, Elias carried Clara inside and set her down on the long chair near the fireplace. He handed her an old shirt and then dipped a cloth into cold water, gently pressing it to her swollen neck. The flickering firelight reflected in her slowly opening eyes. "You are safe now," Elias said softly. "I will not let anyone take you anywhere." Outside the window, the wind continued to howl in waves. But Clara did not know that tonight, another set of eyes was watching the ranch people Elias had no idea were already coming for them. The fireplace inside Elias' home burned warmly and peacefully, a sharp contrast to the nightmare Clara Wynne had just escaped. The simple wooden room gave off a soothing heat, with a faint scent of herbal tea in the air, and the gentle crackle of burning wood sounding like a lullaby trying to calm the terror still clinging to her chest. Clara sat curled up on the long chair, wrapped in Elias' oversized shirt. It hung down past her knees, and the long sleeves nearly covered her trembling hands. She could not remember the last time she had something warm to wear. Elias dragged a wooden chair closer. Not too near, just close enough for her to feel the presence of someone without it being a threat. "You can have some tea," he said softly, placing the cup on the table. "It will help you breathe easier." Clara reached for the cup, hesitating as if even the smallest gesture might set someone off. Elias noticed. His expression softened. "No one here is going to hurt you for holding a cup of tea," he said quietly. It was such a simple sentence, but it made Clara break down. Not loudly, just a silent tremble in her shoulders, and tears slipping down onto the oversized collar. Elias did not touch her. He just waited. He understood that sometimes silence was the warmest kind of embrace. After a long while, Clara wiped her eyes and spoke, her voice hoarse. "You saved me. I do not know why you would do that." Elias looked deep into those frightened eyes. "Because you needed saving," he answered simply. "Because every human being deserves to be protected." Clara lowered her head, fingers clinging to the fabric of the shirt. "Marlon, he will come back. He never lets me go. Let him try," Elias said, not with anger, but with calm, steady certainty. It was the voice of someone who had lived long enough to know exactly where he would stand when the storm came. Clara opened her mouth to speak again, but a strange sound echoed from the yard. Crack. Crack. Elias narrowed his eyes and stood up. That was not the sound of animals or wind. That was the sound of someone stepping on dry branches. Someone was nearby. He turned down the oil lamps and moved toward the window, gently parting the curtain. Outside, darkness cloaked the trees, but in that shadowy gap, Elias saw something that made the back of his neck go cold. Fresh horse tracks, perfectly shaped, still pressed into the damp earth. Someone had arrived, or worse, someone was watching. Elias turned back to Clara. She was trembling, her wide eyes full of dread, as if she already knew what was coming. "Marlon," she whispered. Elias quietly rested his hand on the rifle hanging by the door. "Starting tonight, you will not have to face him alone anymore." Tonight was unnervingly quiet, as if the entire land was holding its breath, waiting for something terrible to happen. Elias stood motionless by the window, his seasoned eyes fixed on the fresh horse tracks pressed into the damp earth. They were so new, so recent, that the moisture on the ground had not even begun to dry. Not an honest person, not someone passing by. Those were the tracks of someone watching. "Stay inside the house," Elias said, without taking his eyes off the darkness near the stables. "I want to check the area," but Clara Wynne shot to her feet, her trembling hand gripping the hem of the oversized shirt she wore. "Do not go out there. If Marlon finds me, he will kill you too." Elias set his hand on her shoulder, giving it a gentle but steady squeeze. "You have endured him for far too long. It is time to put an end to this." He stepped outside, closing the door softly behind him. The wind swept across the yard, carrying the faint scent of ash from some faraway fire. The treetops swayed, their shadows stretching long beneath the silver moonlight. Elias' body was taut as a drawn bow, his hand hovering near the rifle at his side. From the direction of the fence, a twig snapped. Elias turned sharply, raising the gun. No one. Only the night, thick and heavy, wrapping around everything. But he knew someone was out there watching him. He was certain of it. Moments later, the distant ground trembled with heavy, urgent hoofbeats. Torches flared one by one behind the pines, red flickers glowing like the eyes of hunting beasts emerging from the dark. They had arrived. Marlon Briggs' rough, drunken, feral voice bellowed across the open fields. "Clara, you think you can run from me?" Elias tightened his grip on the gun. Behind Marlon, Hector Mullins and 3 of his men rode in a line, torches casting warped shadows across their faces. Hector let out a mocking laugh. "Mr. Crowford, hand her over. The girl is Briggs' property. We just came to collect what belongs to us." Elias stepped forward, his voice low but hard as steel. "That girl does not belong to any demon among you." Marlon roared and kicked his horse forward like a man with nothing left to lose. "Old man, get out of my way. She is my property." Elias lifted the rifle, his eyes steady and fearless. "There is only one thing I see that belongs to anyone," he said slowly, "and that is the punishment all of you are about to earn." Inside the wooden house behind him, Clara pressed both hands over her mouth to stifle the sob threatening to escape. Torchlight flickered through the window, dancing across her face a warning of the storm about to break. Thank you for being here with me. Let me know where you are listening from. And if this story has touched your heart, please subscribe to my channel to support me. I only wish for you to always be safe and happy. Wherever you are listening to this story, the torches in the hands of Mullen's men burned wildly, casting a fierce red light across faces twisted with greed and cruelty. The entire Elias ranch seemed swallowed by a ring of fire. Clara stood hidden in the darkness behind the curtain, arms wrapped tightly around her neck as if the rope was still digging into her skin. Her eyes welled with tears from fear and from worry for the man who had saved her. Out in the yard, Elias Crowford stood alone at the front door, the last stronghold between Clara and the pack of wolves. Hector Mullins jerked his chin toward the stables, where smoke curled up from glowing embers. Mr. Crowford, we are not here to spill blood. Hand over the girl, and you get to live. It is that simple. Elias did not move. That girl is a victim. You are criminals. So no, nothing about this is simple. One of Mullen's men let out a loud laugh and stepped forward a few paces. This old man does not know who he is messing with. Elias' wrist turned slightly, raising the shotgun in his hands with steady force. Oh, I know exactly who I am dealing with. By now, Marlon Briggs was so drunk his eyes burned red. He stumbled off his horse, staggering forward like some broken, angry ghost. I am saying this one last time, he bellowed. Clara is mine. I made her. I raised her. Elias cut him off, his voice ringing out like a hammer striking steel. You did not make her. You did not raise her. You abused her and you nearly killed her a second time if I had not shown up. Marlon roared like a wounded animal and charged. But Elias was ready. Boom! The gunshot ripped through the night like thunder. The bullet did not hit Marlon, but struck the dirt right in front of his feet, knocking him backward onto the ground. Take one more step, Elias said coldly, and the next shot will not be a warning. Fury spread through the rest of the men. Hector Mullins shouted, Get him! 3 thugs charged at once. Elias stepped back, reloading with calm precision. Boom! One dropped to the ground, clutching a bleeding arm. The second man lunged, but Elias swung the butt of the gun hard into his jaw, a sharp crack like breaking bone. The third one had circled behind Elias, knife raised to stab him from behind. In that split second, Clara, watching from inside, saw the flash of steel behind Elias' back. Without thinking, she shoved the door open and screamed, Elias, behind you! Elias spun on instinct, raising his arm to block the blade. The knife still carved a deep gash across his arm. Blood poured down, dark and heavy. Kill him! Hector roared. The ranch yard erupted into chaos. Fire blazed, gunshots echoed, screams tore through the night. Clara started to run toward Elias, when a police siren screamed through the air from afar. A new light was coming. The police siren tore through the night like a blade slicing straight into the chaos in front of the Crowford ranch. Lanterns swung at the heads of charging horses, casting long streaks of light that flew down the hill. Hoofbeats thundered, guns cocked, voices shouted, commands together they roared in like a storm. Sheriff Nolan Graves led the charge, his stern face shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat. He yanked the reins and stormed into the yard with the presence of a man who had long learned to stare evil in the eye. Drop your weapons! All of you! Graves bellowed, his voice echoing across the fields. The Mullins gang froze. Their torches wavered. The confidence they had moments ago vanished like smoke. They had not expected the sheriff to arrive this fast, nor to bring nearly a dozen armed militiamen with him. Hector Mullins made a move to flee, but one of the deputies raised his rifle. Freeze! One more step and we fire. Graves jumped down from his horse, leveling his Colt straight at the gang of thugs. You are all under arrest for assault, arson, and unlawful detainment. Elias Crowford stood in the yard, one hand clutching a bleeding wound, the other still holding his shotgun tight. His shoulder was soaked with blood, glowing dark under the firelight, but his eyes remained unshaken. Graves looked at him, voice softening just a bit. Elias, are you all right? I am still standing, Elias replied through a breath. But I cannot say the same for them. Clara rushed out of the house and ran to support Elias' arm. Her eyes still held fear, but for the first time that night, there was hope. Marlon Briggs, seeing it all, screamed and thrashed, trying to break free from the two deputies holding him. "That girl is mine, you traitor. I told you not to touch her." Graves stepped up and drove a punch straight into Marlon's gut, folding him over. "She does not belong to any animal like you," he said coldly. "And tonight, you are going to sleep in a jail cell instead of hanging innocent people from trees." Hector Mullins was already tied up, still cursing through gritted teeth. "This is not over, Sheriff. I have people backing me." Graves planted his boot on Hector's back and leaned in close enough for only him to hear. "Then let us see who shows up to save you at court tomorrow morning." Mullins' men were disarmed and bound in a line. Their torches were thrown to the ground, one by one, extinguished. The smell of burning began to fade from the ranch yard, replaced by the scent of dust, gunpowder, and the slow return of justice to where it belonged. Clara stood close to Elias, her hand wrapped around his sleeve. He gently squeezed back, a silent reassurance. This chaotic night was over. But the dawn ahead would begin writing what neither of them had dared to dream of yet. Dawn rose slowly. The first light of morning filtered through the worn wooden slats of the Crowford Ranch, casting a soft golden glow over everything, as if the world itself had granted a second chance. Clara Wynne stood on the porch, wrapped in Elias' oversized shirt. Her tangled hair caught the early sunlight with a faint orange hue, and the bruises on her neck and cheeks, once deep and shadowed in the night, now revealed themselves more clearly, painful but honest, like the marks of survival. She held her arms close, partly against the chill of the morning air, partly because the memory of the rope still refused to leave her mind. But today, everything was quiet enough that Clara could hear the birds singing on the barn roof and the soft breeze gliding over the distant fields. For the first time in years, Clara felt like she could breathe. The door behind her opened. Elias Crowford stepped out. The bandage on his left arm was still fresh, but he walked steadily, as if the wound mattered little. He stood beside her, not touching, just quietly being there. The warmth of that presence alone was enough to make Clara feel safe. "Marlon and the Mullins gang," Clara began, her voice light as the wind. They were really arrested?" Elias nodded. "Sheriff Graves is taking them to court this afternoon. Hector Mullins may have money and power, but last night, he racked up enough charges that even he cannot escape now. And Marlon," Elias looked off into the distance, "he will not get another chance to hurt you again." Clara swallowed hard, her eyes beginning to well with tears. "Why did you help me, Elias?" "Someone like me. I only brought trouble." Elias tilted his head slightly, his gaze free of judgment or demand. "Someone like you deserves a good life, Clara. No one is born to suffer what you have endured." Clara pressed her lips together, and for the first time, she did not flinch when Elias reached toward her. He laid his hand gently over hers, warm, steady, and full of meaning. Their hands touched softly. But to Clara, it felt like a door opening after years of darkness. "You can stay here as long as you want," Elias said quietly. "This ranch, it has room for 2 souls in need of peace." Clara lowered her head, and a small smile began to form, fragile, but as beautiful as the rising sun. And in that moment, she knew. Her life starting now had stepped onto a new path. That afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the distant hills, Sheriff Nolan Graves returned to the Crowford Ranch. The golden light of sunset brushed across his coat, and the stern expression that usually defined his face seemed softened by something gentler. Clara and Elias were stacking hay for the horses when Graves rode up to the yard. "Good news," he called out as he dismounted. "The court has accepted all testimonies. Hector Mullins and his men are headed for long-term prison sentences. And Marlon Briggs—" He paused for a second, looking directly at Clara. "He will not be coming back to hurt you again." Clara lowered her head. For the first time, hearing that name did not make her chest tighten. Graves added, his voice deep and sincere, "Clara, if you need a place to stay, the town has rooms at the inn or shelter at the church. But I reckon you have already found someplace far safer." His eyes turned toward Elias Crowford, who stood just behind Clara. His arm was still bandaged in white, but his gaze remained calm and resolute. Clara smiled gently. I want to stay here. I want to start over. Graves nodded, satisfied. Then, I have nothing left to worry about. You two take care of yourselves. As the sheriff rode away, the last rays of sunlight stretched across the ranch yard, casting everything in a soft golden veil. Clara watched him go, her heart light like a heavy stone had finally been lifted after years of weighing her down. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder, gentle but steady. Are you sure, Clara? Staying here means starting from scratch. This ranch is not always as quiet as today. Clara turned to him, her eyes filled with a new kind of determination. I have lived in hell long enough. If I am given a chance, I will make my own peace. Elias chuckled softly, a sound Clara had never heard from him before. Then I will teach you everything. How to care for the horses, how to build fences, how to live out here where no one can touch you again. Clara stepped onto the porch as dusk faded. The oversized shirt Elias had given her still hung loose, but it brought with it a feeling of belonging, something she once believed she would never have again. A gentle breeze lifted her hair, and Elias stood just behind her, not touching, but close enough for her to feel protected. Elias, she whispered, thank you for seeing me. Thank you, he answered with a voice deep, warm, and true. No one is born to live alone in pain, Clara. From today on, you do not have to face this world alone. They stood side by side as night fell, without promises, without words, only peace, the kind they both had long deserved. And that was the true beginning of a new life. My friend, love does not always arrive in blazing fire. Sometimes it is just a small light leading us out of the darkness. It is a steady shoulder when we are shaking. It is a quiet presence that stays. And when two hearts find each other through pain, that love does not just save a life. It makes the whole world feel gentler. I am so grateful you are here. I truly hope you are always safe and happy. Wherever you are in the world, I love you, my cherished audience of Wild West storytelling. Tell me how this story made you feel. Leave a comment below. Hit the number 8 if you enjoyed this story, and do not forget to subscribe so you do not miss the next dramatic tale from the Wild West.